The camera pans low across a sea of polished boots and rifle barrels glinting in the overcast light. Arlington National Cemetery, stone white, dead silent, lined with military brass, and 1,000 eyes trained on the casket draped in the American flag. The air is sharp with formality. A woman clutches a folded letter. A general stiffens as a bugle breathes out its first mournful note. Then, "I'd like to sing," came a voice. Soft, worn, like gravel under rain. All heads turned. A man stood alone at the rear row. 70, maybe 80, slouched shoulders under a faded trench coat, his shoes mismatched. A microphone, cheap and wiry, trembled in his liver-spotted hands. A junior officer was on him in seconds. "Sir, you're not on the schedule." "I know, but I knew him." The officer's gaze didn't soften. "There's protocol, please step aside." The man didn't move. "I promised him. If he went first." Some people in the crowd began recording. A low murmur rippled. "Who is that? Is he family? A homeless vet?" The man's voice cracked. He said, "If I die first, let him sing. I believe he can sing to God himself." Those were his words. The officer raised a hand, signaling security. Tension snapped like a stretched wire. The man didn't flinch. He just looked at the coffin. Eyes glassy, lips quivering. "I'm not asking for applause. I just want to sing him home." And then, a phone rang. The general's aide scrambled, tapping his tablet. "Sir, there's a message from Colonel Hawkins, pre-recorded. Marked urgent." A hush swept over the gathering. The video played. On screen, a man in uniform, face thin but smiling, stared straight into the camera. "If you're seeing this, gone. And there's a man named Arthur. If he's there, don't stop him. Let him sing. He's more than a voice. He's the only one who ever sang when no one else was listening. I want him to be the last voice I hear, even in death." Gasps, audible. The livestream chat exploded. "Let him sing. Let Arthur sing. This is America." The officer stepped back, eyes wide. Arthur exhaled like he hadn't breathed in years. He looked at the casket again and whispered, "Thank you, Hawk." He raised the mic, and for a brief sacred moment, the ceremony was no longer about medals or tradition. It was about a promise. Texas, summer of '82. Heat like a boot on your chest, sand, sweat, and screaming sergeants. That's where it began. Arthur had no business being in uniform. He wasn't a fighter. He was a jazz singer from Baton Rouge, with a voice full of smoke and scars. But draft letters don't care if you once opened for Ray Charles. At Fort Bliss, he kept to himself. Quiet. Too quiet. Other recruits mocked his soft steps, called him Mute Mike. He didn't fight back, just scribbled lyrics in the margins of his field manual, as if notes could shield him from the war. And then came Hawk James Hawk. Hawkins was the kind of man who made a uniform look like it was tailored for God. Smiled like sin, laughed like a cannon. He could lift a truck, drink 5 beers in 5 minutes, and still run a 5-minute mile. He also had one rule. Don't let the loudest voices define the room. Arthur learned that the night he was caught singing in the dark. It was after lights out. Arthur had been humming Swing Low Sweet Chariot to himself in the washroom, just to stay sane. He didn't know anyone heard, but Hawk did. Didn't say a word. Just left a note on Arthur's bunk the next morning. "Sing that again tonight, for me this time." From then on, Arthur became the platoon's midnight medicine. When a kid got shot in training, Hawk dragged Arthur to his bedside. "Sing, he needs to hear something good." Arthur tried to refuse. "I'm not a nurse. You're better. You're a damn soul stitcher." No one else called him that, but the name stuck. When the unit deployed, Hawk and Arthur were inseparable. On patrol, in bunkers, even in the middle of gunfire, Hawk would shout, "Arthur, you know the one, give me a verse." And under mortar skies, Arthur sang, low, steady. His voice didn't dodge bullets, but it held people's hearts still enough to make it through. But wars end. And when the birds came to take them home, the medals clinked louder than the memories. Hawk got promoted. Fast. Up the ladder like he was born for it. Arthur? Came home with a suitcase, a scar near his temple, and nowhere to go. Back in Baton Rouge, the clubs had moved on. The spotlight didn't wait. He tried working at a diner, lost that job after a panic attack during the lunch rush. Spent 6 months living in a broken-down Buick outside a Salvation Army. Hawk called once a year, always on Arthur's birthday, never long. "You still singing?" Only to myself. "Well, keep at it. One day someone's gonna need to hear it." Time dragged. Arthur drifted. Shelters, soup lines, silence. Until one winter, the VA gave him a room in a group home for veterans. Room 4C, no frills. Just a window that faced east so he could wake up with the light. He sang again, softly. Not for crowds, just for the ghosts. But what he didn't know, what no one knew, was that Hawk hadn't forgotten. Every year, Hawk sent a card. No return. Dress. Just a quote. "To the man who sings like God is still listening." And every year, Arthur whispered to himself, maybe he's right. Maybe someone's still listening. The camera cuts to a flickering fluorescent light in the common room of Oak Ridge Veterans Home. Beige walls, plastic chairs, forgotten souls in government-issued slippers. Arthur sat in the corner every Tuesday night. Same chair, same songbook. No audience except the humming vending machine. He sang anyway, not for glory, not for praise, for breath. His voice was quieter now, grainier, like a radio signal from another decade. But there was something in it that made people stop mid-step, like they'd walked into a memory. One Tuesday, during his version of Bridge Over Troubled Water, a new janitor paused behind the mop bucket. A kid, 20-something, phone in hand, earbuds around his neck. He didn't say anything, just hit record. The next morning, he uploaded the 45-second clip with the caption, "Old vet sings like it still matters. 3 a.m. vibes. Forgotten voices. Jack real music." The video got 87 views, 87. One of them was James Hawkins. Hawk wasn't sleeping much these days. Cancer has a way of stealing the quiet before it takes the rest. He saw the video while scrolling through TikTok of all places at 2:11 a.m. The thumbnail was grainy. The lighting terrible, but the voice. God, that voice. He watched the clip 8 times. By the 3rd time, he was crying. Not the loud kind, the kind that just leaks out of your eyes without asking permission. "He's still got it," Hawk whispered. He made a call. The next day, an unmarked car showed up at Oak Ridge. Arthur thought it was someone from the state, but when the door opened, Hawk stepped out. Paler, thinner, oxygen tank in the back seat. But still Hawk. Arthur stared. "You look like hell," Hawk grinned. "So do you." They didn't hug. Too much unsaid. Too many years. But they sat together that evening, in silence, until Hawk handed him an envelope. Inside, a copy of his will. "If I go first," it read, "don't let the choir sing me out. Don't let the colonel read a list of accomplishments. Let Arthur sing. That's all I ask. One song. Any song." Arthur folded the paper, hands trembling. "I haven't sung in public in 20 years, he said. "Doesn't matter," Hawk replied. "You never sang for the public. You sang for souls." Weeks passed, Hawk's condition worsened. Arthur kept singing. Louder now, not just on Tuesdays, every night. And slowly the walls of Oak Ridge started to echo. Veterans wheeled themselves to the common room just to listen. Staff paused their rounds. One nurse cried during his rendition of "Danny Boy." The janitor uploaded more clips. One reached 2,000 views. A podcast host even invited Arthur for a remote interview. He declined. "I'm not a product," he told them. "I'm a promise." Then came the morning. A knock on Arthur's door. A letter from the Hawkins family. James had passed in his sleep. His funeral would be held at Arlington. Full honors. Live-streamed. Heads of state attending. There would be speeches, salutes, songs, and, per his request, "If Arthur is able, let him sing me home." Arthur folded the letter like a prayer. Then he opened his closet, dusted off the coat he hadn't worn since '82, and packed the microphone Hawk once mailed him on his 50th. Birthday. The sun was too bright for a funeral. Arthur stood alone outside the main gates of Arlington. Coat buttoned to the top, the fabric threadbare but proud. A lanyard swung from his neck, an old dog tag polished clean. People streamed past him in sight, black suits, polished shoes, tight formations. Reporters with boom mics, drone cameras buzzing overhead like mechanical bees. He stepped forward. A young lieutenant, clipboard in hand, blocked his path. "Sir, credentials?" Arthur handed over the funeral notice. The lieutenant barely looked. "You're not on the performers list." "I'm not a performer," Arthur said. The man's gaze hardened. "Then you're not authorized to speak during the ceremony." "I'm not here to speak." Pause. "I'm here to keep a promise." Arthur tried to walk past. The lieutenant stepped in again. "Sir, please. This is a military protocol operation. I'm asking you to wait behind the perimeter until the public tribute concludes." Arthur clenched his jaw. "He wanted me to sing." "Who wanted you?" "James Hawkins." That name turned heads. Two Navy officers looked over. A chaplain paused mid-stride. The lieutenant checked his clipboard. "There's a gospel choir scheduled. Military honors. A 3-volley salute. You are not—" Arthur's voice cut in like a blade. "I was his last request." People nearby turned. An older woman stepped closer. Hawk's sister, perhaps. Her eyes scanned Arthur's face. "Were you Soul Stitcher?" The nickname hit like lightning. Arthur nodded once. She whispered something to the chaplain, who frowned, then nodded, but the lieutenant raised a hand again. "Until we verify, I can't allow—" Suddenly, from the grandstands, a shout. "Play the final clip!" All eyes turned. A captain jogged to the AV tent. Seconds later, the screens, those giant LED monoliths set up for the digital audience, flashed blue, then lit up with a still frame. Colonel James Hawkins, lying in a hospice bed, pale but smiling. The video rolled. "If this is playing, then I've gone ahead. Don't cry for me. I got more years than I deserved. But I ask one thing. If Arthur's there, Arthur Quinn, let him sing. Not for the crowd, not for the generals, for me. Because when the sky was falling, he was the only one who gave us something worth listening to." Silence. Then, from the crowd, a murmur. Then voices. "Let him sing. Let the Soul Stitcher do it. Let Arthur sing." The lieutenant hesitated. Arthur didn't wait. He walked past, straight down the center aisle. Not rushed, not afraid, just ready. He stopped 10 feet from the casket. The flag flapped once in the breeze and the crowd held its breath. Arthur lifted the mic. A shaky breath in, the sun warming his face. He closed his eyes and sang the first note. He didn't start loud. No spotlight, no drum roll, just a breath, drawn from somewhere so deep it sounded like the world itself paused to listen. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. The first note wasn't perfect. It wavered, fragile, like an old hinge creaking open. But then the second came, stronger, surer. By the third, the silence was complete. Phones were lowered, sunglasses came off. A toddler stopped squirming in her mother's arms. The live stream chat exploded. "Who is this man? I felt that in my bones. He's not singing, he's remembering." Arthur stood still. His body didn't move, but his voice reached places people forgot existed. Each lyric carved into the air like scripture. Raw, cracked, impossibly human. "That saved a wretch like me." The generals didn't blink. The soldiers didn't. "Breathe." Hawk's sister gripped her hands so tight her knuckles went white. And behind Arthur, the wind caught the edge of the flag on Hawk's casket, lifting it just slightly, as if it too was rising to the song. The chaplain stepped back, one of the choir members scheduled to sing next covered her mouth. Her shoulders began to shake. Arthur sang the second verse like a lullaby, the kind you hum when you don't know if your child will make it through the night. "I once was lost." On the 5th row, a young Marine, no older than 20, stood up suddenly. No order, no command, just stood, then another, stood. Then, a woman, an amputee, 3 rows back, a man in full dress uniform took off his hat. In the corner of the screen, a Pentagon official could be seen dabbing his eyes. The live stream reached 4.2 million viewers. Someone commented, "I didn't come for this funeral, but now I can't stop crying." As Arthur sang the final verse, the clouds overhead broke, not fully, just enough for the sun to bleed through. Golden light hit his face, and for a second, just a second, he looked taller. Younger, like time forgot to press on him. "It was blind, but now I see." He finished. No applause, not because it wasn't deserved, but because it would have broken the sacred. Arthur lowered the mic, looked at Hawk's casket, whispered so only God or maybe Hawk himself could hear. "I sang for you, brother." Then he stepped back, but something happened. A small, high voice called out, "Sing it again!" It was the toddler, the one who'd stopped squirming. Her voice cracked the tension like a pebble on still water. People chuckled softly, but no one mocked. Then Hawk's mother, her voice old but clear, stood and said, "Please, just the chorus." Arthur blinked, hesitated, then nodded. He turned, and without music, without backup, without cue, he sang the chorus one more time. This time the crowd joined in, softly, off-key, together. It wasn't a performance anymore, it was a surrender. Phones dropped. Hands found hands. Soldiers sang, widows sang, strangers sang. And for a few precious moments, it didn't matter who had power, who wore medals, who had titles. It only mattered that one man had once sung in the dark, and now the whole world was singing back. After the final note faded, Arthur didn't say goodbye. He just walked off stage. No handshake, no medal, just silence. But as he passed Hawk's sister, she touched his arm. "I heard him once," she said. "Say you saved his life." Arthur nodded, eyes misted. "He saved mine first." The funeral became legend within hours. Clips of Arthur's voice spread across every platform. TikTok, Instagram, even a late-night comedy show that paused the laughs to play the full chorus. They called him the funeral singer. But Arthur didn't know any of that. He didn't watch the coverage, didn't scroll the comments. He left Arlington the same way he came, alone, coat flapping in the wind, his old microphone tucked in a velvet pouch. 3 days later, a letter arrived at Oak Ridge, handwritten, sealed with red wax. It was from Hawk. His sister had sent it just as he'd instructed. Arthur waited until midnight to open it, sat in his chair under the weak yellow light by the window. The letter smelled faintly of tobacco and cedar. "Arthur, if you're reading this, then either you sang me home or punched a colonel in the face trying to. Either way, I'm proud of you. You once said nobody listens to an old voice, but the world's full of noise now. What we need are voices that remind us how to be still. Yours does that. Keep singing, even if it's just to yourself. Hell, especially then. Wherever I end up, I'll be listening." Hawk Arthur folded the letter and pressed it to his chest. Outside, a crow cawed once before vanishing into the dark. At the same time, across the country, something strange began to happen. Veterans' homes requested his name. Churches called the VA, asking if they could borrow the funeral singer. He declined them all, except one, a private message sent through a local pastor. A Marine, 25, suffering from PTSD, hadn't spoken in months. His mother begged, "Would you just come sit and sing?" Arthur took the train, brought nothing but his coat, the letter, and the mic. He sat beside the young man and sang, "Lean on me." By the third verse, the Marine spoke, 2 words. "Again, please." Arthur didn't cry. He just sang again. Back at Oak Ridge, a nurse found something new on his door. A brass nameplate, Arthur Quinn, Soul Stitcher. Underneath, "He sings where the silence lives." The door creaked open slowly. 12 men sat in a circle, some twitching, some staring at the ground like it might open up and swallow them. One clutched a water bottle like a weapon. Another rocked quietly, whispering to himself. Arthur didn't say a word. He set his mic down, looked at the group, and simply asked, "Who wants to tell me a name?" No one moved. He waited. Then a voice from the back, a whisper, barely there, broke the silence. "Reggie." Arthur nodded. "Tell me one thing about Reggie." The man swallowed hard. He laughed at horror movies, said monsters didn't scare him. Real life was worse. Arthur closed his eyes, took a breath, and started singing "You Are My Sunshine." Not the cheerful version, the slow one, the aching one. By the time he reached the line, "You'll never, oh dear, how much I love you," the man who'd spoken had tears pouring down both cheeks. Arthur finished, whispered, "Thank you, Reggie," and waited. Another voice. Jamal. Then another. Sanchez. Anna. Dad. Arthur stayed 4 hours that first night. He came back every week after that. He never charged, never promoted. When asked why he kept going, he said, "Because I made a promise once, and now it's bigger than just one man." Soon, they started calling the sessions Stitch Time. Veterans who hadn't spoken in years began sharing memories, singing along. One by one, they stitched themselves back together through songs of loss, grief, and grace. Word spread. A group of Gold Star families invited Arthur to sing at a private retreat. He came, didn't wear a suit, didn't prepare a set list. He just asked, "Whose name needs singing tonight?" A mother said, "Jared, he used to hum 'Take Me Home, Country Roads' in the shower." Arthur nodded, and the next note he sang unraveled 100 knots in her chest. Never called himself a healer. He called himself a voice that refuses to forget. And somehow, in a world too quick to scroll past pain, that made all the difference. 1 year later, same cemetery, same row of silent stones. But this time, the air felt different, not heavy with loss, but filled with waiting. A new memorial had been commissioned, a small plaque beneath Hawk's headstone. He believed in one voice. A young lieutenant, barely 21, stepped up to the mic on the anniversary of Hawk's funeral. His hands shook slightly. "I didn't know Colonel Hawkins, but I watched his funeral live stream in my barracks. I was going to quit that week, but I stayed, because of the man who sang him home." He looked to the side of the platform. Arthur stepped forward. No coat this time, no microphone, just his weathered hands and a soft nod. The crowd of veterans, soldiers, mothers, children, they all leaned forward, holding their breath. Arthur lifted his chin and sang, "I'll Fly Away." No music, just voice raw, gentle, holy. Birds took off from the trees like they knew the cue. A flag fluttered. A breeze swept the lawn. But what made it sacred wasn't what moved. It was what didn't. No one spoke. No one checked their phone. No one blinked. When he sang the last line, "When I die, hallelujah, by and by," he didn't say goodbye, didn't bow, didn't wave. He just turned to the nearest child, maybe 7 years old, and gently handed her the microphone. She looked up at him, wide-eyed, then smiled. That was it. That was the final note. Long after the ceremony ended, long after the crowd left, one camera kept rolling. A man reviewing the footage weeks later caught it, Arthur walking away alone. But halfway down the path, he stopped, turned back, and smiled at something unseen. Not the camera, not the stone, something else. Maybe Hawk, maybe peace. The footage ends, with Arthur disappearing into sunlight, and the caption they added later, viewed by millions. He never asked for an audience, just a promise kept. If this story touched something quiet in you, share it. Not for the clicks, but for the promises we keep when no one's watching.